I gripped the edge of the seat as the driver slowed for a curve. Cold air leaked through the crack of the window, carrying the smell of wet pine. My phone buzzed on the console. Gavin's name flashed across the screen. I pressed speaker. Mom, his voice too bright, too careful. That overnight bag we gave you. It's in your car, right? You didn't open it. I stared at the bag on the floorboard. Black canvas ordinary Noah's blue jacket draped over it. My fingers dug into my knees. It's here, I said. My own voice sounded far away. Good. Just making sure. He hesitated. You know I love you, right? He'd said those words maybe twice since his father's funeral. Never like this. My throat tightened. I know, I said, but it came out as a whisper. I looked at the driver, a man Sierra's cousin had arranged. Dark cap hands steady on the wheel. His eyes flicked to the mirror. Everything all right, ma'am. My chest burned. Turn the car around. He blinked. Now. He eased off the highway at the next exit. Cars hissed by in the rain. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my temples. Gavin's voice rose on the speaker. What's going on? We're right behind you. I hit end. The line cut. The driver asked again if everything was okay. I nodded but didn't speak. My hands trembled. I tucked them under my thighs to stop the shaking. Outside, the sky was the color of steel wool, heavy and low. For a moment, I watched the bag like it might move on its own. Under the black canvas, I could see the outline of a toy truck Noah had been playing with earlier. The sight of it made my stomach twist. I thought of the last time we'd all been together, without tension. A Sunday morning, pancakes in my kitchen, Noah building towers out of sugar packets, while Gavin drank coffee and complained about the job market. Sierra scrolling her phone, sighing. Even then, I'd been writing the checks. Groceries? Car insurance? Daycare. Always one more favor. When I finally said I couldn't pay the private school tuition, the calls stopped. The weekends with Noah disappeared. Sierra's polite texts turned to nothing. 2 months of silence. Then out of nowhere, this trip. This bag. The driver took the U-turn. I watched the border signs shrink in the mirror. My phone lit again with Gavin's name. I let it ring. I closed my eyes and tried to steady my breathing. In the quiet, my mind went to the drawer in my study. The envelope with my lawyer's card. The copies of deeds and account statements no one knew about. The trust my late husband and I had set up before his illness. All of it still in my name. We drove past a rest area. I opened my eyes and kept them on the road ahead, though my thoughts were already at the house at the locked drawer waiting for me. I could almost feel the cool brass handle under my fingers. The driver glanced at me in the mirror. Home, then? Yes, I said. Home. Rain streaked the windshield. The bag sat silent at my feet, heavy as a stone. I pulled my coat tighter and watched the mile markers tick down, knowing the real reckoning would begin once we reached my driveway. I set the plates down hard enough to rattle the silverware. Meatloaf, roasted potatoes. Green beans, the same meal Gavin had begged for when he was a boy. Sierra and Noah were already seated at my table, their jackets draped over the backs of the chairs like they owned the place. Gavin poured himself coffee without asking. Sierra's smile looked painted on. We have news, she said, cutting a small piece of potato. Noah's been accepted into the Rockwood Academy. I blinked. That private school across town? It's a wonderful environment, she continued. Smaller classes, better support. Gavin leaned forward, elbows on the table, a gesture he'd never have tried when his father was alive. It's already done, Mom. We just need your help with tuition. The food cooled between us. How much? $15,000 for the rest of this year? Sierra said lightly, as though it were pocket change. 18 annually after that, but it's worth it. He deserves the best. I folded my napkin, trying to buy time. That's a lot. You've always been there for us, Gavin said, his voice smoothing into the same tone he'd used to borrow money in college. You know how much we appreciate it. Noah stared at his plate, poking at his beans. I remembered the checkbook in my purse, the dwindling balance in my retirement account. Carl had warned me before he died. Don't let them turn you into a safety net. But looking at my grandson's small shoulders hunched over his plate, it was hard not to slip back into habit. I'll think about it, I said quietly. The air shifted. Sierra's smile thinned. Gavin's eyes flickered with something sharp. For a moment, no one spoke. The old clock ticked on the wall. Sierra sipped her water. It's about Noah's future, she said softly. But there was no warmth in it. I understand, I replied, folding my hands in my lap to keep them steady. We ate in silence. Noah whispered something about his science project. Gavin didn't respond. Sierra kept scrolling her phone under the table. The meatloaf I'd made for them felt like lead in my stomach. When dinner ended, Sierra stacked the plates without a word. Gavin wiped his mouth, stood and kissed my cheek mechanically. We'll talk soon, he said, already reaching for his coat. Noah hesitated by the door. Bye, Grandma, he murmured, but his eyes were full of questions he couldn't ask. I stood at the sink after they left, staring at the water running over my hands. My ring finger was bare now. Carl's band sat in a box upstairs. I thought of the mortgage I'd helped them with, the car I'd co-signed, the daycare bills I'd paid. All those years of writing checks. Steam rose from the sink and blurred the window. Outside, their taillights disappeared down the street. The kitchen felt smaller without them, but also clearer. I dried my hands and turned off the faucet. The next morning, I pulled my retirement statements from the desk. The numbers stared back at me. 15,000 this year, 18 next. A sum that would push me past the line Carl and I had drawn in red ink years ago. I closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer with the other documents Carl had left me. My fingers brushing the envelope marked Ralston Trust. The paper felt heavier than it should, as though it held not just numbers, but choices waiting to be made. I called Saturday morning, straight to voicemail. I called again that afternoon. Sierra picked up. He's busy, Eunice. Maybe tomorrow. Tomorrow came and went. By the third week, I stopped leaving messages. I just listened to the dial tone stretch out and end on its own. The house stayed quiet. No little shoes by the door. No backpack on the couch. No Noah asking if he could have 2 cookies instead of 1. I baked anyway. Sugar cookies with lemon like he liked. Froze half. Threw the rest out after 3 days. I told myself it was a phase. That Gavin was busy. That Sierra was overwhelmed. That it wasn't punishment. But the silence said otherwise. On the 4th Saturday, I drove by their street. Just once. Their car was in the driveway. Bikes tipped on the lawn. A juice box crushed near the curb. Noah was home. I didn't knock. I drove around the block and kept going. Sunday, I sent a text. Miss you, sweetheart. Let me know if you'd like to bake next weekend. No reply. Monday came, then Friday. No call. I told myself not to chase. That if they wanted space, I'd give it. That love doesn't beg to be included. But it was hard not to replay old weekends. Noah cracking eggs. Gavin laughing when flour flew. Sierra smiling just enough to get through the hour. Those afternoons had felt real. Now I wondered if they'd just been tolerable. At church, friends asked how Noah was doing. Growing fast, I lied. Busy with school. I went home and deleted photos from the fridge. Not in anger, just to stop looking. On the 7th weekend, the phone rang. I grabbed it. Spam. I stood there staring at the silent screen, heart pounding like it mattered. The mailbox filled with nothing from them. No scribbled drawings. No thank you notes. No updates. I started drinking my coffee later in the day, trying to slow time. I cleaned closets that didn't need cleaning. Sorted Carl's old flannel shirts. Folded them. Unfolded them. Put them back. I told myself it was just time. That they'd call when they were ready. But even the way Gavin spoke before tight, shallow, like reading from a script, echoed now in the corners of the house. They'd wanted something. I'd said maybe. And the door had closed. That wasn't misunderstanding. That was calculation. Love shouldn't hinge on wiring money or signing tuition checks. I knew that. Carl would have reminded me. He warned me about this, how strings would tighten once I was alone. Don't let them make your wallet your worth, he said one night. When Gavin asked for a loan, he never repaid. I hadn't listened. But I heard him now. The silence wasn't just neglect. It was strategy. I stood at the counter Sunday morning watching coffee drip slow into the pot. The mug sat waiting. The house stayed still, and I realized if they weren't going to show up for the time, the memories, the small, ordinary joys, then maybe they never came for those reasons in the first place. I poured my coffee, sat alone, and opened the drawer again. The envelope still waited. Unopened, sealed, heavy with decisions I hadn't made yet. I walked into the coffee shop to clear my head. No phone, no folder, just space. I ordered black coffee and took a seat near the window. A voice caught my ear before I even looked. She's got nothing else going on. Might as well be useful. Mallory. I turned slightly. She sat 2 tables over, sunglasses pushed to her head, talking to someone I didn't know. Blonde, nodding, sipping something iced. Mallory didn't see me. Or if she did, she didn't flinch. She watches old game shows all day, she said, stirring her drink like it bored her. I mean, it's not like she has a job. We're doing her a favor, honestly. The kids bring energy into her life. The other woman laughed softly. And she's lucky we're not asking her to babysit. Yet. I stared at the back of her head. My hand tightened around the coffee cup. Heat soaked through the cardboard. I stood before I could decide whether I wanted to or not. She didn't notice. I walked out, got into the car, and sat behind the wheel with the engine off. I'd known somewhere deep down that this is how they saw me. A leftover. A time filler. Not a person. Not a mother. Just someone who used to be useful. And now, what a faded helper. A name on checks, a house with heat and cookies and occasional errands. I didn't cry. I didn't call Gavin. I didn't text Sierra to ask if this is what she said behind closed doors, because I already knew. It wasn't even said with malice. That's what stayed with me. It was casual, routine, like that version of me dimmed, dismissed, had been living in their heads for years. I drove home, pulled into the garage, sat for a moment longer in the dark car humming around me. Then I killed the engine and went inside. The kitchen light buzzed. The fridge hummed. I boiled water, then didn't make anything with it. Just poured it down the sink. I walked down the hall into the office, opened the drawer, pulled the envelope out again. I looked at it harder this time, not just for the trust documents, but for what it represented. My name, my control, my line. Carl didn't build this for them. He built it for me. Not to be shared out of guilt. Not to be divided through manipulation. It was supposed to be shelter. For me. And here I was, letting it be bait. I tucked the envelope into my purse. Just in case. It stayed with me the next day. At the grocery store. At the pharmacy. At the library. A reminder. A wait. A warning. On Wednesday, Sierra sent a text. Hey, any chance you could help with pickup this weekend? Noah's got a school thing. Lots going on. No apology. No warm-up. No mention of the weeks of silence. Just need. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I walked out onto the porch that evening. Coffee in hand. Envelope still zipped inside my bag. The air was cool. The yard was quiet. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like the one being left out. I felt like the one deciding when to open the door. I shut the front door and threw the bolt. My hands didn't shake anymore. I set the bag on the kitchen table, unzipped it, and pulled back Noah's jacket. Beneath the tiny jeans and toy truck were 3 tightly wrapped packages. Heavy, cold through the plastic. Not flour, not sugar. I stared at them until the room blurred. Then I zipped the bag shut, pushed it aside, and washed my hands twice. No tears came. No panic either. Just a slow, hard stillness that felt new. I left the bag on the table and walked down the hall to Carl's old study. The smell of his aftershave had faded long ago, but the weight of his presence was still in the grain of the desk he'd built himself. I knelt, unlocked the bottom drawer with the key I kept on my own ring, and pulled it open. Inside lay the file marked Ralston Deed, hold until probate. Underneath were account statements, trust documents, copies of beneficiary forms, and a separate envelope with Eliza's name on it. All of it still in my name. I ran my hand over the top sheet, feeling the embossed seal. Carl had insisted on the trust years before he got sick. "You never know who'll get desperate," he'd said. "Make sure you don't." I'd never told Gavin about any of it. He thought I was living off my small pension. He thought the house, the savings, the lake property were all gone. He thought wrong. I sat back on my heels and breathed slow. My heart wasn't racing anymore. The documents were more than paper. They were my line, my anchor, my proof that I wasn't helpless. The bag in the kitchen wasn't a mistake. It was a plan that counted on me being blind and soft. But they didn't know what was in this drawer. I pulled out the envelope labeled "Immediate Action" and laid it on the desk. Eliza had drafted it after Carl's funeral in case anything ever threatened my safety or finances. All I had to do was sign and call. I closed the drawer and locked it again, put the key back on my ring. Then I walked back to the kitchen. The bag still sat on the table like a black hole. The room was silent, but for the hum of the fridge. I poured coffee into my mug and sat opposite the bag. My reflection stared back at me from the dark surface of the drink. Noah's smile flickered through my mind. The way he had run to me at the park last summer. The way he had slipped drawings into my purse when Sierra wasn't looking. He was still innocent. But he was being used too. I sipped the coffee and set the mug down. My fingers touched the strap of the bag, then pulled away. Not yet. I pushed the bag off the table and onto the floor, out of sight. Then I reached for my phone and opened my contacts, scrolling until Eliza's name came into view. My thumb hovered above the call button as I stared at the black canvas bag at my feet. I walked into the post office just as Lila was coming out. Same silver hair pulled into a bun. Same alert eyes behind her thick glasses. "Eunice Brandt," she said, smiling like she meant it. "Haven't seen you in a while." We hugged, brief but warm. She still smelled like cinnamon gum and hand cream. "I've been keeping quiet," I said. She nodded. "I figured." "After Carl?" "Well, everything shifts, doesn't it?" We stood there for a moment in the shade by the glass doors. "I actually meant to call you," she said, lowering her voice just a little. "Saw Gavin at the branch last month." My fingers curled tighter around the envelope in my hand. "Oh, he was polite," she said. "Asked a few questions. Wanted to know if he could be added to your trust. Said it was urgent family planning." My mouth didn't move, but I felt something deep inside clench. "I thought you knew," she added gently. "Didn't process anything, of course, just flagged it." I smiled. "Not a real one, just enough to close the subject." "Thanks, Lila. I appreciate you telling me." She reached out and touched my arm. "You always kept your papers in order. Carl, too. Just be careful, okay? I am," I said. "Now more than ever." We said goodbye. I walked to my car, sat with the engine off, and stared at the steering wheel. He wasn't waiting. He wasn't hoping. He was planning. He thought I'd already started fading. That I wouldn't notice if my name stopped standing on its own. The bag in my kitchen was just one part of it. The trust was another. My house, the deed, the accounts, he thought it would all land in his hands before I had time to say no. I didn't cry. Didn't shake. I drove home slow, steady, one turn at a time. When I walked in, the bag still sat where I left it tucked behind the counter, heavy and quiet. I stepped over it, went straight to the desk, pulled out the folder again. The trust papers. The power of attorney Carl had left untouched. Everything was still clean, no amendments, no co-signers. I called Eliza. "Don't need to act yet," I said, "but I want you to update the file. Add a clause. Restrict any third-party access unless notarized in person. With me present." "You sure?" she asked. "Very." She didn't push. "I'll draft it. Email by tomorrow." I hung up and poured a small cup of coffee. The house was still. I thought back to the last time Gavin remembered my birthday. 5 years ago. A card unsigned. Probably Sierra's doing. Since then, not even a voicemail. But now he had time to visit banks, revise ownerships, study estate law. I walked to the back porch, sipped my coffee, and watched a bird land on the fence. Not even spring yet, and already the vultures were circling. But this house was still mine. The file was still locked. The trust still stood. They wanted control, but they'd forgotten who signed the original papers. The phone rang just after dinner. Gavin's name lit the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. I picked up. "Hey, Mom. Too cheerful. Too bright. How are you?" "Fine," I said flat. "I was just thinking," he went on. "It's been too long. We've all been so busy, but we'd love to spend time. Real time." You know, he let it hang like he was offering something valuable. "We were thinking," he continued. "Amber's cousin has this great cabin up by the lake in Quebec. Quiet. Peaceful. Perfect for Noah. Just a few days to reconnect." No pressure. I waited. Sierra's voice chimed in. She must have been on speaker. "Noah really misses you, Eunice. He asks about you all the time. It'd be so good for him to see you again." Now she cared. Now he missed me. "Sure," I said. "That sounds nice." Relief rushed through the line. "Great," Gavin said. "We'll take 2 cars. You and Dad can bring a bag or 2, maybe some of Noah's stuff. Our car's tight." "I'll bring what's needed," I said. We hung up. I stood there in the quiet, holding the phone like it still weighed something. The house felt colder than it had 5 minutes earlier. I walked to the desk, pulled the trust folder again, and slid out the sheet I hadn't touched in years. Secondary power of attorney limited use. I called Eliza. "I need a new form," I told her. "Power of attorney. Very specific. One-time use expires after 30 days. "Got it," she said. "Want me to prepare it under your current living trust?" "No," I said. "Make it separate. Quiet. Just in case. Do you want a witness present?" "Not yet. Just draft it." I hung up. The bag still sat untouched in the kitchen. The black zipper hadn't moved. They thought they were getting me back into their circle, that the cold shoulder, the cut-off weekends, the silence had softened me. They didn't know I was watching the whole time. And now suddenly, I was welcome again, right when they needed a passenger with no questions, a quiet ride, and 1 extra bag. I packed light. 1 weekend bag, a folder, a notepad. The deed to the lake house just to remind myself it was still mine. Then I went to the safe and pulled out the flash drive Carl had backed up for the trust. Scanned copies, old messages, notarized records. I slipped it into a small pocket in my purse. The house was still. The porch light buzzed. I stood in the doorway and stared at the street. No wind, no movement. Just a mother holding the silence like a shield. I wasn't being invited. I was being positioned. I zipped my bag, checked the locks, and left the porch light on, just bright enough to see the moment I returned. I opened the door and froze. It wasn't Gavin behind the wheel. A man I didn't recognize stood by the car, loading gear into the back. Tall, quiet, too quiet. Sierra waved from the porch. "That's Marcus," she said. "My cousin. He's doing us a favor driving you and Dad up. Our car's full with Noah and everything else." I looked at Gavin. He didn't meet my eyes, just gave a tight smile and handed over a thermos. "It's just easier this way. Fewer stops. More space for the kid." I nodded, slow. Walked around and opened the back door. One black overnight bag sat there zipped shut. I didn't touch it. Marcus nodded politely. "Mrs. Brandt." "Eunice," I said. "And where exactly are we headed?" "The cabin near Lac Tremblant." Sierra answered quickly. "Same place Amber mentioned. You'll love it." I looked at Noah. He was standing behind Sierra, hoodie half-zipped, holding his stuffed bear by one arm. "Noah," I said, bending slightly. "You excited?" He glanced up, smiled weakly, and looked away. Didn't hug me. Didn't run forward. Sierra stepped between us. We should hit the road. Long drive. Marcus closed the trunk. I climbed in. Gavin handed me a snack bag through the window like I was a child going on a school trip. Then we pulled out with them following behind. I sat in the front seat, hands on my lap. Marcus didn't speak unless spoken to. Polite. Focused. Too focused. The highway stretched out in silence. Trees blurred past. I asked where he was from. He said Albany, but gave no details. "Do you know the cabin well?" I asked. He nodded. "Been a few times. No elaboration." I looked back at the bag. It hadn't shifted. I knew exactly what was inside. The silence between cars grew louder in my chest. Every 30 minutes I checked the rear view. Gavin's car followed close, never passed. When we stopped for gas, Noah stayed in the car. Sierra got out and walked straight to the restrooms. Gavin hovered by the pump texting. I walked over. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he said quickly. "All good." "Noah's just tired. Long week at school. He wouldn't even say hello," I said. "He's just shy today," Gavin muttered. "Give him space." I nodded. Walked into the shop, bought coffee, didn't drink it. Back in the car, Marcus started the engine before I shut the door. We pulled back onto the road. Another hour passed. The GPS said we were near the border. I looked at my phone. 1 bar. No signal. I turned slightly. "Marcus, do you know if the cabin has Wi-Fi?" He paused. "Not really. Spotty at best." I leaned back. Folded my arms. Closed my eyes, but not to rest. I was testing something. They were watching my every move. Gavin hadn't called me Mom once this whole trip. Sierra hadn't offered a seat. Noah, my Noah, wouldn't even meet my eyes. I stared out the window. Trees, snow patches, mile markers. They didn't want a reunion. They wanted a delivery. I pressed my hand against my purse, felt the folder inside. The driver hummed along to the radio, just enough to feel normal. But nothing about this was normal. Not the route, not the silence, not the boy who used to run into my arms and now kept his head down like he'd been warned. I snapped the photos fast one after another before the morning light shifted. Each package, each angle. The zipper pulled halfway back to show Noah's toy wedged against the plastic. My hands didn't tremble this time. I slid the photos into a manila envelope along with a signed affidavit I'd drafted myself. Dates, times, details. My handwriting was tight, deliberate. No room for doubt. Then I printed a single sheet of instructions open, only if contacted by law enforcement or if I failed to return by Monday noon. I signed and dated it, folded it once, and tucked it behind the affidavit. I sealed the envelope, pressed my thumb to the glue, and held it a second longer than needed. Eliza would understand. She'd been Carl's friend as much as mine. She'd sat at our kitchen table after his funeral telling me to keep everything in my name, telling me to make copies, to notarize, to never assume good intentions just because someone had my blood. I grabbed my coat and drove to the notary's office. It was quiet at that hour. The clerk didn't ask questions, just stamped and signed where I pointed. Back at home, I addressed the envelope to Eliza's private office, not the firm. I added a second, smaller envelope with a USB drive containing the same photos and a scanned copy of my trust. Then I drove to the post office, bypassing the drop box. I stood in line, handed it to the clerk, and asked for certified restricted delivery. "Need a signature on receipt," I said. He nodded, printed the sticker, and handed me the slip. I slid the receipt into my wallet behind Carl's old driver's license. Outside, the wind cut sharp across the parking lot. I pulled my coat tighter and walked slow to the car. The envelope was out of my hands now, but the choice of when to open it was mine. That was the point. Inside the car, I dialed Eliza's cell. She picked up on the second ring. "Morning, Eunice." "Package on the way," I said. "Certified. Instructions inside." "You're sure?" she asked softly. "Yes. Don't open unless the note says." "You'll know." "I'll be here," she said. "You're not alone in this." I ended the call, rested the phone on my knee, and watched a delivery truck back up to the loading dock. I wasn't waiting to be saved. I was building my own witness. At home, the bag still sat under the counter. Marcus would arrive tomorrow. Gavin and Sierra would follow. I boiled water for coffee. Measured grounds. The smell filled the kitchen, but didn't comfort me. I poured the coffee into my chipped mug and took a slow sip. The taste was bitter. Steady. I stared at the bag, then at the door. If they thought I was just a passenger, they were about to find out who had been driving all along. I set the mug down and began making a list of what to bring on the trip, items I'd need, and items they wouldn't expect. I yanked open the envelope Sierra had left on my porch with directions to the cabin. No return address. No smiley face sticky note like before. Just paperwork, folded twice. I smoothed it on the table. At the top was a printed reservation confirmation. Lac Tremblant Cabin, 3 nights. Under primary guest in bold my name, Eunice Ralston. Below it my address. My phone number. My driver's license scanned in the corner. No mention of Gavin. No Sierra. No Noah. I flipped the page. The credit card on file was mine, the old backup Visa I'd kept for emergencies. Someone had used it to pay the deposit. My stomach clenched. I checked the additional guests section. Blank. I read it again. My name, my ID, my card. My signature, but it wasn't my signature. A neat forgery, a looped R instead of my sharp one. My throat went dry. This wasn't just manipulation. This was a trap built with patience. They wanted me to be the sole registered occupant, the one in possession, the one whose name would appear on every document when the border agents opened the bag. I pushed the papers away and sat back, staring at the ceiling. Carl had warned me. Desperation makes people creative. The bag under the counter wasn't an accident. This cabin trip wasn't a reunion. It was a delivery. I pulled the reservation back toward me, read the fine print. The border crossing details. The customs declaration note about primary guest responsible for contents of vehicle. They'd done their homework. I stood and went to the desk, pulled out the file again, flipped to the secondary power of attorney Eliza had drafted overnight, signed where she'd marked with yellow tabs, slid it into a fresh envelope. Then I opened my email and forwarded the reservation to Eliza with one line, "Hold until my signal." I printed a copy and added it to the envelope she'd already received. The house was quiet, except for the tick of the wall clock. I thought of Noah, small fingers gripping his stuffed bare eyes down. He knew something. Kids always do. He'd been told not to talk. I closed my eyes and exhaled through my nose, slow and steady. They thought I'd walk blind into their plan, that I'd carry the bag cross the line sign where they needed me to sign and never realize until it was too late. But the envelope was already in Eliza's hands. The power of attorney was already signed. The evidence was already documented. All I had to do now was step into their script and decide where to rip it. I folded the reservation papers back into their envelope, tucked it into my purse beside the flash drive, and zipped it shut. Then I went to the kitchen, lifted the bag from the floor, and placed it by the door. Marcus would be here in the morning. Gavin and Sierra would follow in their car. I poured the last of the coffee into my mug and drank it cold, staring at the black canvas bag like it was a living thing. It wasn't fear in my chest anymore. It was a low, steady current of resolve moving towards something I hadn't said out loud yet, but was already building. I sat at the kitchen table before dawn, with my laptop open and a list in front of me. Each line was a small wound I'd been bandaging for years. Today, I stopped. First, the grocery card. Click. Canceled. No more automatic reloads. Then the student loan top-up Gavin had set to draft from my account. Click. Canceled. The car lease Sierra had slipped into my name. Click. Revoked authorization. Notice sent to the lender. Noah's extracurricular fees. The one thing I'd clung to even after saying no to the tuition. Canceled too. Each click felt like a door closing. No ceremony, just removal. I kept my breathing slow. My fingers were steady on the keyboard. The bank pages refreshed. Balances shifted. Pending transactions disappeared. Carl's voice whispered in my head, the way it had at the start of every month since he died. You're allowed to keep what's yours. For years I'd ignored it. Told myself love was giving. Told myself family meant sacrifice. This morning, silence felt like truth. I printed the confirmation emails, stacked them neatly, and slid them into a folder marked cutoffs. My hand brushed the other envelope, Eliza's instructions, the reservation, the photos. I shut the laptop and leaned back. The room was still. I thought about how Gavin would find out. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe at the gas pump when his card declined. Maybe at the leasing office when Sierra tried to make a payment. Maybe when Noah's coach called about unpaid fees. No calls from me. No explanations. Only silence. I poured coffee and stood at the window. The yard was pale with frost. The porch light glowed faintly, though the sun had already climbed. It was the first morning in years I hadn't written a check. My hands weren't empty. They were mine again. I pictured Gavin at the kitchen table in his own house, scrolling through his phone, seeing the words, "Payment failed." Sierra's tight face, her voice sharpening. Their plan unraveling one small strand at a time before they even reached the border. I drank slowly. The coffee was bitter and warm. This wasn't revenge. It was air returning to my lungs. I opened my planner and crossed out every note tied to them. Payment dates, reminders, receipts. Page by page, I erased my name from their monthly survival. The house creaked as the heat kicked on. I imagined Carl at the counter, arms folded, nodding once. When the last page was cleared, I closed the planner and slid it into the drawer with the deed. Then I picked up the phone and dialed Eliza. "Done," I said, when she answered. "Everything, everything. I'm walking in with nothing they can use." "Good," she said quietly. "Keep your folder close." I ended the call and went back to the window. The bag waited by the door like a dog that didn't belong to me. Outside, the street was empty, but I knew the next move would come soon. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, and set it upside down on the rack, ready for whatever was about to arrive. I heard the car before I saw it. Tires crunching on my driveway, a door slamming too hard. I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the door. Sierra stood there with a bright smile and a black overnight bag slung over her shoulder. "Pack light this time," she said, brushing past me into the hall. "We'll take care of the rest." She set the bag down like she was doing me a favor. "This one's easier to carry. Less weight for you?" I looked at her. "Less weight," I repeated flat. She smiled wider. "We're so grateful you're helping Eunice." Really? This trip will be good for everyone. I heard Noah's voice from the porch. Small. Uneasy. Why do they need Grandma's car again? The words hit harder than Sierra's smile. I stepped to the door. Noah was standing by the car, hands stuffed in his pockets. Eyes on the ground. He didn't look at me. Sierra's tone sharpened. Noah, go wait in the car. Grandma's busy. He shuffled off. The screen door creaked shut between us. I stayed still. Didn't answer. Didn't ask. Just watched her arrange my things like a hostess packing a guest out of a hotel. Inside the house smelled of coffee. The mug from earlier still sat on the counter half full. Sierra turned, brushing invisible dust from her jacket. We'll be at your place first thing in the morning. Marcus will drive you up. It's easier that way. I see, I said. You'll love it. Quiet, fresh air. Just what you need. Her eyes flicked to the bag, then to me. She was already halfway back to the door before I could speak. Thanks again, she said like I'd agreed to something. I followed her to the porch. She called over her shoulder to Noah. Come on, sweetheart. He looked up at me once quick, then down again. They got into the car. Sierra waved. Gavin honked once as they backed out, though he hadn't come to the door. I stood in the doorway, holding the knob, the new overnight bag at my feet. Another bag. Another favor. Another smile like a blade. I carried the bag inside and set it next to the first one. Both black. Both zipped. Then I went to the desk, pulled out the folder Eliza had prepared, checked each page. Power of attorney, notarized affidavit, photos, reservation, copies of every transfer I'd just canceled. I added a handwritten note, received second bag. No explanation. Marcus driving me up. I sealed it in a new envelope and laid it beside my purse. The house was quiet. The clock ticked in the hall. I poured the rest of my coffee into the sink and rinsed the mug. My hands stayed steady. Noah's whisper replayed in my head. Why do they need Grandma's car again? Even he could feel it now, the weight of something wrong hidden under the small talk and the forced smiles. I wiped the counter and turned out the kitchen light. The two bags sat by the door like silent witnesses waiting for morning. The knock came just after 9. Too early for neighbors. Too timed to be casual. I opened the door. Gavin stood there with a bakery box Sierra right behind him, lips tight around a too bright smile. Morning, Mom, Gavin said, like nothing had happened. We brought your favorite. I looked at the label. Raspberry Danish. They hadn't remembered that in 5 years. Sierra stepped inside without waiting. Thought we could have coffee. Just a quiet morning before the drive tomorrow. I stepped aside, watched her scan the room. Her eyes flicked to the bags near the door, then to my purse. I didn't say anything. Gavin walked in still talking. We're really looking forward to this trip. Fresh air, no phones, just family. He handed me the box like a peace offering. Like sugar could erase silence. Everything's behind us, he said, setting plates on the counter. Let's just have a nice weekend. Start over. Sierra opened a cabinet, pulled down mugs like she lived here. I'll make coffee, she said already, moving toward the machine. I nodded. Sat at the table. Gavin sat across from me. You've been quiet lately, he said, his voice careful. We've all been under stress. It's no one's fault. No, I said. It isn't. He relaxed just slightly. Sierra poured coffee, set a mug in front of me. Let's not rehash anything. We're good now, right? I took the mug, sipped, bit into the Danish. Sweet, dry. They watched me chew like it was a test. I smiled. It's good. They smiled back too fast. The whole thing felt choreographed, rehearsed. Gavin leaned in. Thanks again for helping with the trip. We really appreciate it. Just being together, no one needs that. I nodded. Of course. Sierra stood, started gathering cups. We'll head out. Marcus will be here early, so get your rest. She paused at the door. Oh, and we added one more thing to the bag, just a few of Noah's books. Nothing heavy. I nodded again. I'll keep it safe. They left like they were leaving a staged set. I closed the door behind them and locked it, walked back to the table, finished the coffee, then opened the bag. Inside, under a layer of pajamas, a wrapped lunchbox. I didn't touch it. Instead, I grabbed my phone, snapped new photos, and added them to the drive. Then I sat back down. They thought they'd softened me, that I'd sip coffee and forget the trust they'd broken. But what they didn't see was that I wasn't pretending to forgive them. I was pretending to believe them. The difference mattered, because the first one is for peace. And the second is for war. I parked at the curb. Checked the address. It was their house, but every window glowed like a showroom. Cars lined the street. Laughter leaked from the porch. I wasn't told. The invitation had said dinner. Quiet, just us. I climbed the steps and rang the bell. Gavin opened it surprised, but trying to hide it. Oh, hey, Mom. You're early. Behind him, people moved through the hallway, with wine glasses balancing tiny plates. Someone was setting out a cake. Sierra swooped in, kissed the air beside my cheek. You didn't say you'd be so punctual. I didn't know I needed to. She laughed lightly. It's just a little get-together. Friends, parents from Noah's school, nothing formal. I stepped inside, looked around. Music, smells, people in sweaters talking about ski passes and private schools. No one noticed me. Noah ran past, nearly bumped me. Hi, Grandma, he said, then vanished into the living room. Sierra took my coat. We didn't think you'd want to be around so many people your age, she said, pouring wine like it covered the insult. I took the glass, smiled. I'll manage. She turned away before seeing the smile drop. I walked to the kitchen, stood near the sink, watched them laugh around the island like I wasn't real. Gavin passed by. You okay, Mom? Of course. He didn't wait for more. I stayed 15 minutes. Poured the wine down the sink when no one was looking. On the way out, I passed the hallway where family photos once hung. They'd replaced mine. I opened the door myself. Didn't say goodbye. Got in the car. Sat for a moment. They didn't want me there. Not really. I was a body that carried favors. A face they tolerated between needs. Back home, I dropped the keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes. Noah's lunchbox still sat untouched in the second bag. I opened the zipper. Tucked beneath the books was a folded customs declaration slip, blank unsigned but marked with my name. I took the paper and added it to the folder, slipped the lunchbox back where it had been. Let them believe I never looked. Let them believe I never left that party with more than silence. The wine glass sat by the sink still full. I dumped it, washed it, dried it. I set it upside down next to the mug. The bags waited by the door. Tomorrow, I'd get in the car. I'd let them drive. I'd let them believe they were still ahead. For now, I turned off the lights, locked the door, and folded the envelope shut. I opened the car door, pulled the bag out, walked up their porch steps without knocking. Gavin opened the door before I reached the top, smiling too wide, expectant. I didn't hand it to him. I set it down. Slowly, deliberately, right between us. I opened it, I said. The smile cracked. His eyes darted past me to the driveway. Sierra stepped into the hall, phone in hand, then phone on floor. It slipped through her fingers. She bent to pick it up, didn't look at me. Noah stood behind the curtain, small hand pressed to the glass. I didn't raise my voice. Gavin opened his mouth, then closed it. You were supposed to drive straight through, Sierra said quiet. I looked at her, then back at him. Mom. Listen, no. He flinched. I know what's in there. I know the reservations under my name. I know what crossing that border with that bag would have meant. Sierra finally looked at me. We were out of options. There's always another option, I said. You just didn't want one that involved your own risk. Noah opened the door a crack. Grandma. I turned to him. Go inside, sweetheart. He hesitated, then stepped back, closed the door. Gavin reached for the bag. I put my foot on it. You planned to use me. You sat in my kitchen, smiled in my face, let your son hug me, and you planned this. Sierra folded her arms. It was supposed to be simple. I stared at her. For you. No one spoke. The porch was too quiet. No traffic. Just breathing and lies crumbling. I lifted my foot. Gavin didn't touch the bag. I stepped back, turned, walked down the steps, got in the car, started the engine. They stayed frozen in the doorway. I didn't look back. Didn't need to. They knew, and I was done pretending not to. The phone rang before sunrise. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Mrs. Ralston? A woman's voice said. Calm? Official? Yes. This is Officer Martinez with U.S. Border Patrol. Your son Gavin Ralston and his wife Sierra have been detained at the Champlain crossing. They listed you as their emergency contact. I gripped the counter. Is Noah safe? He's with us, she said. He's calm but confused. We need to arrange immediate placement with a legal guardian. You're listed. Tell me where to go. She gave me an address. I hung up, set the phone down, and pressed my palms flat against the counter. The house was silent except for the clock. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I grabbed my purse, slid the envelope with Eliza's papers inside, and locked the door behind me. The drive north was gray and empty. Frost on the grass. Trucks moving slow in the opposite lane. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. I kept thinking of Noah's face behind the curtain the day before. Small hand pressed to the glass. At the Border Patrol station, a young officer led me through a side door. He's in the family room, she said quietly. I stepped in. Noah sat at a small table with a paper cup of water bear clutched in his lap. His eyes went wide when he saw me. Grandma. I crouched and opened my arms. He walked into them without hesitation. It's okay, I said softly. You're coming with me. He nodded against my shoulder but didn't speak. The officer handed me forms. Temporary custody emergency release. They're facing serious charges, she said. We'll need more documentation soon. I signed. My handwriting was clear sharp. Eliza's clause already gave me legal standing. Will he need to see them before we go? I asked. No, the officer said. They're in processing. I thanked her, took Noah's hand, let him out. The cold air hit us. He squeezed my fingers tighter. In the car, he asked in a small voice, Are Mom and Dad in trouble? I started the engine. They made some bad choices, I said. But you're safe now. He stared out the window, didn't ask more. We drove south back toward my house. The miles unwound behind us. His bear sat on his lap. He didn't let go of my hand. I glanced at him once. His face was pale but calm, like he was waiting for something solid to hold on to. Carl's warning echoed in my mind again. If you ever have to choose between saving your money or saving yourself, choose yourself. I'd done that. And somehow, it had saved him too. We reached my street just as the sun cleared the roofs. I parked, turned off the engine, and sat for a moment. Come on, I said. Let's go inside. He followed me up the walk without a word, his small footsteps echoing against the porch. I signed the papers without pausing, initialed every line, dated every box. No one argued, no pushback, no Sierra, no Gavin. Eliza met me at the courthouse. She brought copies of the sealed photos, the customs forms, and my notarized affidavit. She didn't ask for details. She just nodded when I handed her the envelope. We submitted everything. The judge didn't blink. Temporary emergency guardianship granted. Noah sat beside me, legs swinging. His backpack was half zipped, a pencil poked out. When it was done, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. We drove home. quiet. He stared at the houses we passed. I didn't fill the silence. At the house, I showed him the guest room. Sheets already clean. Nightlight plugged in. He looked around. Can I keep Bear here? Of course. He placed the stuffed bear on the pillow like it was a person. Dinner was grilled cheese and tomato soup. No questions, no speeches. He ate everything. After he helped me rinse the dishes, I dried. We didn't talk about where his parents were. Later, he asked if we could read. I pulled one of Carl's old chess books from the shelf instead. We sat on the couch, a blanket over our legs. Grandpa used to teach you, he asked. I nodded. Every Sunday. He didn't say more, just listened. By 9, he was yawning. I tucked him in. He didn't ask for his parents. I sat by the door for a while just listening. His breathing slowed. Even. Steady. I hadn't heard that kind of sleep in a long time. Not in that house. Not in that boy. Downstairs, I opened my laptop. Logged into the financial accounts. The joint card closed. The secondary access to the utility bills removed. Emergency fund transferred to a trust in Noah's name. Locked. With a condition access only at 21 with proof of employment or enrollment. No one else had the code. I printed the changes. Filed them in a new folder. Labeled it Now. I poured a cup of coffee. Sat by the kitchen window. The wind moved the curtains just enough to remind me the world kept going. No drama. No declarations. Just structure. The kind you build when no one else will. Upstairs, he turned once in his sleep. Then still. I sipped the coffee. Reached for the envelope marked custody hearing. Prep. The night held. The house stayed quiet. And for the first time in a long time, so did I. The envelope was thin. Sierra's handwriting angled, fast, impatient. I opened it. 4 pages. Complaints. Deflection. She missed Noah. Prison was unfair. Conditions were dehumanizing. The system was rigged. I had no idea what they were going through. Not one sentence said she was sorry. She mentioned me only once. I hope you're not turning Noah against us. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, dropped it in the kitchen drawer with expired coupons and rubber bands. 2 days later, Gavin's arrived. 1 page. Short sentences. No excuses. I don't know how I let it go this far. I should have stopped her. I'm sorry. He didn't ask for anything, not even for me to write back. I didn't. The next morning, Eliza came by with 2 folders. Custody prep, timeline charts, financial records. Keep everything tight, she said. Show stability. Show clarity. I nodded. We sat at the table. Noah was at school. The house was quiet. Eliza slid a photo across to me. Do you want to include this? It was from 2 years ago. My birthday. Me, Gavin, Noah, Sierra. We'd gone out for pancakes. Back when things still felt like family. I looked at the photo, then shook my head. No. She understood. Took it back. We reviewed the school reports, attendance records, notes from his teachers. All strong. He's doing better here, she said. That's clear. I didn't respond. Just kept flipping pages. After she left, I made coffee, sat by the front window. The mailbox stayed empty. No follow-up. No call. No sudden declaration of change. Just silence. I didn't miss the noise. At night, I reread Gavin's letter. Just once. Then I folded it. Slid it into the custody folder, not as evidence. Just as record. Noah came home humming. Set his backpack down. Grandma, he said. Do I have to go back there? I met his eyes. Not if the court agrees. He nodded. Okay. Dinner was pasta. He asked to help. Stirred the sauce like it mattered. We played chess after. He beat me. Fair. At bedtime, I asked if he wanted a story. He said, "Can we just sit for a minute?" So we did. No questions. No demands. Just a chair, a blanket, and one quiet child trying to understand where he belonged. Downstairs, I filed the paperwork Eliza left. labeled a new envelope custody hearing, Gavin's letter. I sealed it, placed it on the desk, turned off the lamp. The house stayed still. No buzz, no threats, no apologies with strings. Only what was left when the rest had fallen away. I cracked the eggs, handed him the bowl, beat them until the yellow's even. Noah grinned, sleeves rolled up, whisk clutched tight. He stirred with both hands like it mattered. I slid butter into the pan. Let it melt slow. You'll do the flipping, I said. He nodded, focused. Careful, not rushing. The first batch burned. He laughed. I didn't correct him. We started again. The second came out perfect. We ate standing up, leaning against the counter. No screens, no noise, just us. After school, he did his homework at the kitchen table, backpack open, pencil tapping. I stayed close. Reading, paying bills, answering nothing that wasn't urgent. He asked for help on a science worksheet. I showed him how to read the graph, then watched him finish it alone. In the evening, we played cards, gin rummy. He cheated twice. Badly. I let him. Carl's old mug sat on the side table, still chipped, still holding pens. I thought about how different it all felt now. The weight had shifted. Noah asked if we could visit the park this weekend. We'll bring sandwiches, I said. He looked relieved, like he'd half expected me to say no. After he went to bed, I cleared the table, wiped it down, and turned off the light. The house stayed quiet. No messages, no drama. Just the rhythm of things returning to their shape. One drawer at a time, I put order back into the place. Sorted the junk mail, recycled the flyers, labeled a new folder. Noah, school. Everything that used to take second place was back on top. I sat down, opened Carl's planner from the drawer. He used to track birthdays, fishing seasons, grocery coupons in the margins. I flipped to this week. His handwriting still neat. Tell Eunice to check tires. I smiled. Wrote underneath it, done. The porch light buzzed once, then went dark. I got up, reset the timer, and checked the lock. Everything was holding. Everything was still. And for once, I didn't feel the need to brace for what came next. I poured the coffee. No sugar, no cream, just black hot and mine. The mug was chipped. One side faded. The handle rough from years in the dishwasher. It still read, "Still the mother." I stepped onto the deck. The morning air bit. Wind sharp off the trees. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. I didn't flinch. The screen door clicked shut behind me. I stood at the railing, both hands around the mug, the heat soaked through. The house behind me was clean, quiet, stable. No voices raised, no footsteps rushing, no one asking for anything. Noah was still asleep. His shoes lined up neatly by the door. I'd washed his school clothes the night before. His math quiz sat signed and packed. Carl's boots were still by the back stairs. I hadn't moved them. Couldn't. Wouldn't. The coffee cooled slow. A bird landed on the far rail. Looked at me. Flew off. No phone calls. No letters this week. No drama sent in envelopes. I hadn't answered Gavin's last attempt. Just filed it. The custody hearing was next month. Eliza had everything ready. Noah would speak if asked. He wanted to stay. He'd said it once before. Bed simple and low. It's better here. I hadn't responded. I didn't need to. The sky shifted, pale blue breaking through cloud. I took another sip. The locks had been changed. The will updated. The trust restructured. Every file with my name now had only mine. No co-signers, no backups, no escape hatches for anyone else to crawl through. I exhaled. Set the mug on the railing. It sat there steady, just like the house. Just like me.